So in this video series, I'm going to talk about universal basic income and why if the government funds the universal income, it's not going to work. And you will know exactly the economics behind it in the next couple of minutes. So let's dive into it. So before we start, I just want to reiterate that this channel is dedicated to helping busy, full-time professionals to master investing and get a higher return over a long period of time. So the goal of these videos is to help you save 1K, 10K, or even 100K from investing. So if you want to get future videos, then click on the subscribe button and I'll see you in the next video. Before we start, I just want to celebrate another success story within Investing Accelerator where Arian sold his Shack options for a 31% gain in 6 months. So that is amazing. Congratulations, Arian. And Ashel also sold his MSI for 60% gain in 3 months. And Lee also sold her Play for 27% gain in 4 months. So amazing return within Investing Accelerator, and congratulations. So this month, I'm looking to help an additional 15 people without a financial background to master investing and target 30% a year. So there's more details within the description. Now, before we dive into potential solutions, let's recap what it means to have UBI and how that relates to the poverty line. UBI is not really about removing income equality because there's always going to be rich people and there's always going to be people who are less rich. But it provides a foundation for poor people to start to think about how they can get a new job, how they can improve their skills, how they can basically start a business if they really wanted to. And this gives them a platform to go up higher. Basically, it gives them a little bit income to start so then they can make the pie bigger and bigger and bigger for every one of us. And that is really the intention. So when I think about UBI, the biggest problem I see is always going to be the economics. How is that going to impact the inflation rate? How is that going to be impacting the economy if you are printing money? And the biggest question is UBI economic feasible? And is it a shift of money from the people who have it to people who don't have it? Or is it printing money? And hence, there is inflation for one of them and there's no inflation for the other one of them. And how much money is printed each year compared to the handout? And that's going to be an interesting comparison. Now, in a pure economic sense, inflation means that there's a general increase in the prices of stuff compared to the quantity of money. So you're printing more money, that is a little bit faster than the productivity increase within the economy. So then there's inflation. And remember this when we're talking about the solution, because what if we just printed more money for people and how would that work? And if you look at COVID 2020, in Canada, there was a handout to a lot of people. As long as you apply for it, you get it within minutes. And in US, there's a similar thing. And basically, a lot of people that they already have some money, they'll take the check and invest in the market. And that's why you see this crazy increase for all these technology companies, Apple, Facebook, and so on, is because the government is printing money, which gives people the money and then they invest themselves. And then they drive up the stock price. So that's what happens when you just print money and give it to people, regardless of their status. So here I created a chart between people who are above the poverty line versus below the poverty line, and people who get money and people who don't get the money. Now, if you are above the poverty line and you get money, then chances are you're not doing anything with it. You're probably putting it in the market, so then you're driving the share prices higher. Now, it's fantastic for me because I invest in the market. But if you are below the poverty line and you get the money, then you will spend the money on necessity. And those are the people who need it the most. And it helps them tremendously. So even though there are people that get the money and they invest in the market, which is fine, you also get people that spend it on food, on water, on electricity, on housing, which drives the economy and makes them grow faster. Now, if you don't get the money, then it doesn't really impact the people that is above the poverty line because they have enough money anyways. But it will tremendously hurt the people below the poverty line. So you see, even though the argument for giving the handouts is that some people don't need it, the people who really need it will really benefit or will really be hurt if they don't get the money. So when you think about it from an economy perspective, from the entire society perspective, there needs to be these programs where it helps people below the poverty line because it helps them tremendously. This is just a chart of the impact, wealthy versus poor. And here you'll see that this is the distribution of wealth within the United States, if I remember correctly. That's where I pulled it. And the wealthiest has 47.9% of the wealth. And the poorest people have 0.2% of the wealth. So you can imagine, even if you give them a handout of $1,000 to the wealthiest people, it's not going to make too much of a difference for them. It's going to actually reduces their percentage a little bit because everyone else is also getting $1,000. So relatively speaking, they are getting a little bit poorer. But then for the poorest people, they have a negative 0.2% because they're in debt or whatnot. That's going to bring them up to potentially breaking even or even slightly positive. So to them, that has a giant impact and it really helps them out. So here's the billion-dollar question. Who's going to pay for it? How is it going to be paid for? And what does that mean for the economy? So the common solution number one that everyone is going to say is we're going to get the government to pay for it. Because of course, this looks like a socialist idea. And of course, we're going to get the government to pay for it. How else are we going to get to pay for it? And some of the ideas that I was researching online was increasing in taxes, robot tax, slowing down innovation because of you want to tax the innovative companies. And this initial idea might seem like a great idea because obviously if innovation is taking our job, then we tax innovation. But at the same time, for the society to continue to grow, you need innovation. So what you want is for innovation to be happening as quickly as possible so then you can decrease the cost of production, so on and so forth, so then people don't need as much money to continue to live and thrive as well. So that is generally not a good idea, even though it might seem good on paper. And the second idea is a reallocation of budget. Maybe we can cut some from healthcare, cut some from the military budget, or cut some budget from the education so that we can fund universal basic income. And I'll explain how that works and whether it is feasible in the upcoming slides. So let's take British Columbia as an example because that's where I live. There's 5.07 million people living in BC. And I searched up the statistics from the government. There's 557,000 people below the poverty line. So that's actually around 10%. So when you think about that, US has 10% of people below the poverty line. BC has 10% of people below the poverty line. So this number is not country specific. This number is systematic, or it's just the way the curve is constructed. So if each person below the poverty line gets $12,000 a year, then we'll need 6.68 billion a year, which is around 7 billion a year. And if everyone in BC gets $12,000 per year, then that is 60 billion a year. So you can see the number is huge. And the reason is because there are so many people within BC, and we're just looking at one province. We haven't even projected this to Canada or to the United States. Now, let's think about this. What is the size of BC's economy? The size of BC's economy is $253 billion. So that is quite large. But if you compare that to the numbers we just mentioned in terms of the handout, then you can see the chart in the left bottom corner below, which is if we give everyone $12,000 below the poverty line, the cost is $7 billion, which is approximately 2.7% of the economy. And this is quite interesting because it's awfully similar to the inflation rate. So if we take whatever money is being printed by Fed for inflation, then we give it to the people below poverty line, that will solve our problem immediately. And if we decide to give everyone $12,000 each year, that is 60 billion a year, and that is 23.7% of our economy. And if we do that by printing money, that is going to lead to a massive inflation because a lot of money is being printed and it's 23% of the economy is being printed in terms of money and give it to people, that is going to cause inflation, and basically it will destroy the economy. And that's why you can't just print so much money and give it to people, because the math doesn't work. So the next idea is that what if we can look at the government's budget and reallocate it, maybe cut something from here, cut something from there, so then we have enough money to give everyone $12,000 a year. Now, if I pull this up, the BC government budget is $64 billion in revenue each year. This number is actually quite interesting. So if you try to give the people below poverty line $12,000, then it's approximately 10% of the BC government's budget. So if we just allocate 10% of our budget to people below the poverty line, we have solved the poverty problem. So that is actually quite achievable. But there's also other implications, like what if people are out of the poverty line? Do they not get the money anymore? And how do you keep track of that? What if people are avoiding taxes, and so on? But the key message here is that if you just allocate 10% of our budget today, we solve the problem of poverty. If we want everyone to have $1,000 a month for a year, then that would be the entire government budget today, which is $60 billion compared to $64 billion revenue. So basically, that will cut out all the services provided by the government, including like firefighters, police, hospitals, so on and so forth. And it will reduce a lot of complexity. It will reduce a lot of government agency, but at the same time, you also don't get any services anymore. So when you think about the trade-off, it's probably not worth it to give everyone $1,000 a month for 12 months. But instead, it's better to have government around, because when you think about the potential benefits of a government, it is actually quite significant. Now, here is an alternative. What if everyone in BC pays people below the poverty line $1,000 a month? And how much would that cost us? If each person pays around $4 a day, every day, then we will provide enough money for everyone below the poverty line to have universal basic income. And that's quite interesting, right? Only $4 a day, everybody. If we agree to do it, then we can execute this plan. But of course, that is actually $1,300 a year, which can be quite significant when you think about it. So it all depends on whether we as a society wants to solve this problem together. And I guess the next question is, if we are paying $4 a day to people below the poverty line to get universal basic income, then what do we get out of it? Are they going to be doing something that can benefit all of us? And if they do, it should be a very direct benefit. So those are the two basic ideas when it comes to government and redistributing wealth. And the next couple of ideas are more creative, because I want to ask the question, what if they can pay for themselves?